Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello and welcome to What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Margaret, and today I am talking to Emily Cherkin. She is a former middle school English teacher and a parent of 2. Emily consults with parents and speaks and writes about parenting and screen time to bring her tech intentional approach to as many people as possible. Emily's book, The Screen Time Solution, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech intentional family, is an Amazon bestseller and available everywhere books are sold. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Let's start with the word judgment-free. We try to be a judgment-free podcast, and one of the problems with trying to learn and grow in this space, or really how our kids eat, how our kids learn, how our kids spend the summer vacation, it sometimes feels like it's predicated first and foremost on what you're doing wrong. So why was it important for you to address this feeling of judgment-free as part of your title?
Great question. I often say that parenting is the judgiest sport I've ever played.
Well said. Well said.
Yeah. And I feel like that happens from day one, how you feed, how you diaper, how you sleep, all of those, big milestones of parenting. And what I have found is that the second most judgy era of parenting for me has been around the screen time piece. And so I wanted to write and offer services that offered no judgment, or at least as little judgment as possible. I like to think of it as an invitation to reconsider or think about things differently. But I have joked that I need a sandwich board that says, I'm not judging you anytime I meet someone or talk to someone new.
Yeah, because it is hard, because it is implied with so many of these things like, well, Steve Jobs' kids don't even have screens and you FaceTimed with grandma once and so you stink.
Yeah, your brain's rotten. And
it's hard. And I don't want to skip ahead too much, but I think one of the things that I like about how you write about this is it's bigger than you. We always use the example of recycling, right? That like we're scrubbing out our strawberry container because that's the key to solving the environmental problems, when really these problems are happening on a scale that is so different than what we can control.
Yes, agreed.
So how does that apply in this area?
Yeah, so I think of it kind of like a sunflower, that it doesn't matter what reason brings you to the screen time problem, in quotes, whether it's, you're a pediatrician or you're a teacher or you're a parent or you're even a child, or if you're worried about eye health or physical health. But the center of that, sunflower, so to speak, is children and what's best for children. And so I think it takes kind of pecking away at all different levels of it. I mean, I am a parent and I was a teacher, so that's sort of the language I speak. But, I think it's very easy. I think the technology industry has found it very beneficial to them to make parents feel responsible for this problem, because that's much easier than them having to change how they do things. And so I think that's where I get angry and feisty about it, because I feel like it's not a fair fight. I think I will say to parents all the time, like, look, this isn't your fault per se. I mean, yes, we do give devices, but it's our responsibility to learn so that we better understand what's going on, so that we can better support our kids and push back on forces that are much more powerful than we are.
Right. Absolutely. And I think seeing myself as a parent reflected in the book that I had my first in 2008 now. And I was very concerned. Did you as well?
Me too. Yes.
So I was very concerned at that time of like, oh, iPads, and that's really the problem. And what I've seen, especially post-COVID, is that screens and education are so interwoven now that the idea that we were in charge of keeping screens out of our kids' lives, which was difficult and challenging, and I didn't always do well, is now I have kids who are on a screen 8 hours a day because of school. And I was amazed. I saw a picture of one of my nieces in a college environment where every kid has a laptop open in the class. And I mean, it just makes me realize, oh, screens are so different now in terms of they're so foundational to everything we do. And so talk a little bit about how that problem has changed and how we start to deal with screens when they're such an absolute.
Yes, that's such a good point. And, the book is really geared towards parents, but for the last 6 years, my activism has actually been around screens in schools. And I say 6 years because this was a thing we were worried about pre-COVID. And, COVID and lockdown and remote learning definitely added fuel to the fire, but it was already growing. I mean, kids were already having.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like I saw it in my house very much post-COVID, but it's also a little bit of that is what age my kids were during COVID. They were heading into middle school. And so I think in elementary school, we were still doing a lot of paper. And then COVID and middle school kind of happened at the same time for me. And then I felt we emerged from COVID like everything is on a laptop screen.
Yes, because COVID normalized what was already building. And schools spent millions of dollars on tech platforms and computers, and they couldn't just walk away. I mean, think about the cost, taxpayers or investors who were like, what? You just spent this many millions and now you're not going to use it? So it was a perfect storm. It was already brewing. COVID just sort of added fuel to the fire in terms of the excessiveness of it. And I think simultaneously, parents kind of got a peek behind the curtain of how much was happening online. I mean, even so, we have kids the same age. I joke they were born when Apple products were released because I had my son around the iPhone and my daughter around the iPad. And, when my son entered kindergarten, he's now 16. The very first day of kindergarten, he came home with a sheet of paper that said he had to learn Control-Alt-Delete so that he could log into the school computer to take standardized testing. And I was like, okay, I don't teach kindergarten. I taught 7th grade, but I'm pretty sure that he can't even write his own name. But I'm supposed to teach him this computer skill to take a test on a computer where it was so bonkers to me that that's where we were starting. And that was in, 2013 or something. So it is so much more impactful now. And you talk about college classes with laptops. Now go to 6th grade. That's what 6th grade is. I mean, my daughter's school has a laptop program. Most schools are moving towards that or have them. And a 1-to-1, which means each kid takes home a device or has a personal device at school. This is happening as young as kindergarten with iPads, in the name of teaching children how to read. And one of my approaches that I write about, but also talk about a lot, is I'm not anti-tech. I'm tech intentional. And so I really believe that there is a place for it in education, in our careers, but we are displacing absolutely important skill building and human development first. Like, we're pushing those aside in favor of more tech. And, we've been sold this message that more tech is better, that it will make our lives easier and convenient. But there's a paradox here because we learn in moments of friction. And so when we make things easier, we stop learning. And as adults, one could say, whatever, Google knows everything I do, everything, whatever, I'm done. I'm already fully baked. But for my kid, that brain is still developing. And so that's where I get pretty angry at the focus on so much tech at the expense of critical developmental skills first.
That's right, and I want to kind of hone in on that because I think it's really interesting. It's not that I do think the future, I know somebody in medical school right now and talking about how medicine is starting to change because the emphasis in medicine used to be memorizing gigantic amounts of information so that any given patient would walk in and you would say, okay, I know that. That now that's Googleable, right? That you don't necessarily want to watch your doctor Google your symptoms because it would be nerve-wracking, but that you do have to adjust to the gift of computers, which is that this information is available, but that if you don't learn the fundamentals of it and you just skip to Google, you're not really a doctor. You're just a person with Google. And so I think figuring out a lot of what you talk about in the book is that resilience. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship between learning and being able to find information. And it seems sometimes like, well, we can find information. Why don't we just do that? Like, what's the benefit of learning instead of just finding?
Yeah. So this is really this idea of information versus knowledge, right? Like it is completely possible for me to Google something and get a quick answer. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes that's really convenient. But there's something in the learning experience where the process of finding out that information, challenging your original thinking, learning how to figure out which sources are credible. Like, how do I know that what I'm reading? I mean, you're talking about the doctors, and I'm thinking, well, AI is going to ruin all of that because AI is now built into Google search. So our doctors might be Googling misinformation about a medical condition, which is terrifying, right? The reality is we need struggle to learn and grow. And one of the things I feel is very contradictory to that, again, is more tech in school in the name of convenience or supporting teachers. And we can talk about that. That's a whole challenge. But children need to struggle. They need to have obstacles, both literal and metaphoric, to become resilient. And this is a really difficult thing for parents because both, I'm guessing we're in a similar age group, and how we were raised in a little bit more of a free range childhood, right? Where we could explore and kind of be independent, shifting to that sort of helicopter parenting style of the 80s and 90s of like swooping in and rescuing. And now what we have are snowplow or lawnmower parents, right? When we go ahead of children and mow away obstacles to keep them from experiencing discomfort, hardship, pain, sadness. And I don't mean this to be callous, but our children need discomfort. Our children need struggle. They need adversity. They need to know what it's like to make a mistake because that is where they learn and grow and sets them up then for future adulthood, right? I mean, we can look at, like Julie Lythcott-Haynes' book, How to Raise an Adult.
Yes, we will link to her episode. We spoke to her about her book on the podcast. She's amazing.
Yeah, and that was several years ago at this point, right? We're talking like it's even worse now. And I shouldn't say it like it's a problem we can fix and address, but kids are hitting milestones later. We can look at Jean Twenge's research on that too, in terms of developmental milestones. What a 16-year-old was like in our adolescence is very different than what a 16-year-old is like today. And part of that is, the pandemic didn't help, but just the overprotectiveness of parents and fear, I think, is the other part of that. And the world feels more scary than it did. I mean, part of that's because we're getting older and wiser, but I would argue too, it's because we have 24/7 access to clickbait media that ups our anxiety. And then in turn, that impacts how we parent.
Yes. We use that touch tone sometimes. Like, how would you feel about this if you didn't have a phone? Like, would you be as dialed into this? And it's a very, very changing world. I want to talk about technology for all ages and stages because we have parents listening who are all sorts of different ages. And we're going to talk about this kind of year by year, or at least era by era for childhood. I am talking to Emily Cherkin, the author of The Screentime Solution, and we'll be right back.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE.
So in the book, you go through really clearly how technology impacts different ages. So let's just kind of outline that a little bit for the listeners. And then, spoiler alert, we're going to talk a little bit about how the kind of overarching thesis is delaying technology as long as possible, which I missed the boat on, I'm not going to lie, a couple times, but no judgment.
Yes.
So let's talk about really young kids, people who have toddlers. What are they facing in terms of technology?
So it is a different landscape than it was when our kids were toddlers. And again, the normalization of that, we look around and we see a lot of toddlers holding phones and holding iPads. And, you can buy the kids' cases for iPads now with the handles. Yeah. And, I actually think the easiest way to explain my approach, developmentally speaking, is in what I call my TLDR, too long, don't read. So if you don't want to read the book.
In every chapter, there's a little section at the end that's like, okay, I didn't want to read this all, but here are the salient points. Very helpful for busy parents.
And if we take my TLDR of my entire book, it is my definition of tech intentional, which is really three things: less is more, later is better, relationships first. And so any age, this is relevant. So for toddlers, less is more. If you FaceTime with grandma a couple times a week, that's fine, because in my opinion, that's using the technology as a tool to maintain a connection you have with someone you care about, right? And you get a back and forth. It's still dialogue. It might be face, right? That's still valuable. Are you FaceTiming 24/7 with grandma? No one's ever said they're doing that. So I'm not worried about that, right?
Right. And usually the toddler's running off, let's be honest.
Exactly. We know toddlers are active and busy and they need that. So again, less is more and later is better. So less is more for toddlers means occasionally, I always say a little bit of screen time's fine and a lot's too much, which is not helpful. It's not a number because I get asked that a lot as well. But more important, and the AAP and the WHO have similar but also still vague numbers about total hours. And I appreciate that on one level because I think that if you are too restrictive, too strict, too specific, then parents feel like they've already failed, so why bother? And I would rather have parents focus on what does matter for development at these ages that's going to help your child. So less is more just means any time that is possible to pick a non-screen option, great. And don't rule out audio. I think there is value, and I don't mean, in lieu of reading to your children, but I'm saying like if you're trying to get dinner on the table and there's chaos, turn on music, turn on, a child-friendly podcast. There's actually quite a few out there, like something that still can be engaging, but doesn't require sitting, right? Part of the problem with that passive consumption is it's just not moving, right? You're not having these tactile three-dimensional experiences. And so when I love talking to occupational therapists because they see this clinically. And, I talked to one a couple months ago and she was like, look, I used to work with this sort of toddler to 6-year-old age group on fine motor skills, like, gripping a pencil and that kind of thing. And she's like, I'm not even there. She's like, I have to teach children how to turn the pages of a book. That's where I am. And shocking to me in some ways, because I don't think about that as a skill we have to learn, but it is. And, when you watch a toddler or a teenager, let's be honest, it's all tapping, right? It's like touch tap.
Or you watch a toddler, if you ever try to put them, give them a magazine and they try to expand the pictures, they're pinching and pulling because they're trying to get it. Yeah.
Right. And to me, that's actually really a powerful indicator of how quickly children learn. And so I hear a lot, well, my kid needs exposure now so they can figure it out later. But I will tell you that, first of all, what tech you and I used in elementary school is not the tech we use today. And even engineers and technologists and coding people and all the tech people, they didn't learn all those skills until college or graduate school. Sure, they knew how computers worked or they had email or whatever it was, but more important, and, full disclosure, my husband works in the tech industry. So I always like to highlight that before I get pushback because it's true. And I live in Seattle, right? Like it's half the city. And the reality is, he will say, I don't hire an engineer because they're good at whatever. I don't know what engineers do at tech companies, but engineering stuff.
Do their engineering stuff. Yeah.
They do their engineering stuff, which I frankly always think of trains, which I know is not what an engineer at a tech company does.
That's not what they do, Emily. That is not what they do. No. My husband is also an engineer, and I can tell you it's not trains.
There you go. Exactly. But he will say to me, he's like, okay, yeah, they need those technical skills. That's maybe 50% of the interview. And we're talking adults here who've already received, college or graduate degrees. He's like, but can they communicate? Can they look me in the eye? Can they problem solve? Can they manage their time? Can they complete a project, within specific instructions? Like that is the skills building stuff that needs to be developed in childhood. And a lot of that is executive function skills, which if we bump to the next, well, we went toddlers, but if we went to tweens, right, or late childhood, early adolescence, that brain development is massive, what's going on sort of between ages 10 and 14. And we see it as parents, right? Like, it's certainly a perfect storm with puberty and all of the hormone changes as well. But there's a sort of triangulating effect at that developmental stage too. We've got the brain stuff, we have puberty stuff, and it's also the age at which we give kids devices, their own first personal devices. And that is where it gets really hard for parents because we see them changing, which is normal, right? And I have to remind parents of this all the time. It is normal for your kid to be all of a sudden sassy and roll their eyes and, give you scoffing sighs.
Yes, sadly, it is developmentally appropriate. Sadly.
It's also necessary. It's part of their differentiation and building of their own identity. But then when we give them the phones and they start accessing social media and all their social lives move on to this digital tech, it gets very murky about what's causing what and what's influencing what. And so our instinct as parents is to blame the tech. And let me be very clear, I do, and I will. But we have to remember, and this is to my third point about relationships, like the way we survive tween and teen years is by focusing on our relationship to our child. Yes, we have to talk about tech. Yes, we need clear boundaries. We need to be role models, but we have to have ongoing conversations with our children just to maintain a connection with them so that when problems occur on tech, because they will come to us. We are the people that they trust, that they know we will help them. And so that, to me, parents are, especially in those years, well, what parental controls should I download? What's too much time? Should I ban these apps? I mean, I just call it digital whack-a-mole because you can ban one thing, they're going to find something else, or they're going to access. P.S. You can get TikTok through Pinterest. If parents don't know this is what kids are doing.
I will say, I've talked about it on the podcast many times. I took a hard stand against TikTok. I was like, we're not having TikTok. TikTok is bad in these 800 ways. It's bad for body image. It's causing like all sorts of problems for kids. I'm not having TikTok. TikTok is in the groundwater now. So it doesn't matter that my kids didn't have TikTok. They get TikTok on YouTube. They get TikTok on Pinterest. They get TikTok. TikTok is everywhere. If your kid has a phone, they have TikTok, which is so frustrating because I was like, look at me, no TikTok. And then they're like doing this dance. And I'm like, how do you know that TikTok dance? I thought I banned TikTok. Oh no, it's everywhere. And even if you blocked everything, their friends are showing it to them at school.
Yes, I'm so glad you said this because I get this a lot. You know, these parents who are, again, well-meaning, well-intentioned, clear values. We've done everything right. Like we've talked about screen time and their kids are still on TikTok and they can't believe it. And it's, again, not because you haven't done everything right, but because it's in the groundwater or they're getting it on school computers or their kids, you know, their friends on the school bus have it. Like, so it becomes now, that's where it is, whether we like it or not, then it becomes the conversation. So, you know, my daughter and her friends will be hanging out at home and a couple of them have phones. She does not. She has a light phone right now. And we share my phone, which is a whole nother topic. It's fascinating. But I'll walk by and I'll be like, remember, there's creepy people on there. Remember, don't post any pictures about, you know, personal identifying information. And remember, there's porn. And if you see porn, you need to come and talk to me, right? Like, I am annoying them as much as possible because I want them to know I'm watching and listening. And, you know, that's part of parenting a teen and tween anyway, is just being annoying. They already think we are, so we just accept that role. But we need them to know that we're paying attention. And that is actually, rather than how much screen time is too much and what parental controls do you recommend, the two most important questions to ask as parents is, do I know what my child is doing online? And do I have a good relationship with them? Those are the questions that I want parents to know the answer to.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it's also the idea that your only kind of line of defense against what is going on and that they're going to be exposed to. I mean, we can hold off on the devices. We can put parental control. Like, you don't have a ton of control about what they're eventually going to be exposed to, but helping kids understand the relationship that they're having to that. I often say to my kids, I don't want you to see certain things because they're scary and you're not ready for them, you know? And I remember I've used this example before on the podcast that my kids were maybe 6 or 7 and we were Googling stuff to find out fun facts. And at some point they were like, watching, it was like a Looney Tunes kind of cartoon. And they were like, oh, Google, like blown apart by bomb. They're thinking of the Looney Tunes version of that. And suddenly I'm like racing to the computer that if you were to Google blown apart by bomb on Google, like what you would see and what a child has access to. And you just have these moments where the scales kind of fall from your eyes of like, it's not necessarily about kids sneaking or like, oh, I really want this or that. It's that there are no controls and there are no guardrails. And so helping your kids establish their own guardrails and figuring out at every stage, like one thing that you said before that I wanted to really dial in on, because somebody explained it to me this way when I had younger kids and it really helped me. Active behaviors versus passive behaviors and the kind of spectrum from active to passive, and that like a toy that lights up and things shoot out of it and stuff and flies in your baby's face. The toy is active, your child is passive. And that you really want toys where like your kid is trying to fit the blocks into the shapes or whatever it happens to be. You want to stay in that active area. And we were talking about it in another conversation about kind of children's toys and play and how play affects kids' brains. But it comes up a lot in the book about tech, that the problem with tech is not that it's just evil and it's really about strangers finding your kids on Facebook or whatever. That's all there as well. But as young kids, the active is like playing with your kids. Then there's reading a book to your kids. Then there's handing your kids a book for them to read to themselves or a toy for them to play with. At the end of that spectrum is handing them an iPad, which maybe you can't afford a babysitter. You want to have one nice meal with your spouse. You're going to go out to dinner and hand them an iPad. I'm fine with that. But understanding kind of where you are on that active versus passive spectrum seemed really important to this idea of like tech intentionality.
Yes. And, not letting perfect be the enemy of good enough. And I think one of the challenges, and this is, our own exposure again to marketing and advertising and messaging about what it means to be a good parent. I think it's chapter 4 when I write about the dance studio, and Anne Green Gilbert and brain development. And one of the things that she talks about is how what babies need is to be put on the floor so they can move. And because they are naturally going to develop and do the things that they're literally born to do. And we don't need to interfere much with that. We need to give them the opportunity and space to do that, obviously within safe parameters. But what happens is we get told, oh, your baby needs this special toy. It's going to stimulate their brain. Honestly, you need a recycle bin for your toddlers. That's the most beneficial toy you can give them, or a pile of dirt in the backyard and a spoon. And I think we have to be careful as parents not to buy into this. There's no money in telling parents to put them on the floor or go out in the garden and dig with a spoon. And yet those are actually things that impact brain development and help build relationships and neural pathways and all of that good stuff. So it does require some discernment on our part as adults about what messaging we allow. And going back to what I said at the very beginning, parenting is a judgy sport. We get judged if we don't do something or if we do something. And so I actually see a lot of this as work on ourselves to be okay with being different, with being counter to what the norms are. I am that parent with a capital T and a capital P, right? And it's taken age to get to a point where I just don't care about okay, so I don't do it your way, but I can be okay with you doing it the way you do it and I'm doing it the way I do it. And, I'm going to assume best intentions. And that's really hard. It takes a lot of work. This is a humbling part.
It does. It takes a lot of work. And sadly, we're going to talk about our role in all of this. We would like it to be someone else's job, but it's kind of about our role and our values. And we're going to come back and talk about that. I'm talking to Emily Cherkin, the author of The Screentime Solution, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech-intentional family.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW. Let us surprise you.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
So let's talk about tech intentionality and how it relates to our family values, because this is something we talk a lot about on the podcast, and we've come up against it so many times that like we're trying to decide if our kids should play travel soccer. But in order to know what the answer to that question is, we have to understand what we value as a family. And if we value family dinner every single night as the most important value of our family, our kid can't play travel soccer. But we may have to balance our values. So let's talk about how values and really understanding your family values sets us up for tech intentionality.
Yeah. And this is something that I think is so valuable to talk about, because I think we often assume that we all know what our family's values are, but we've never really had an explicit conversation about it. And the word values may be too sort of nebulous for a young child. So I give an example of, for younger kids, you can say like, imagine an alien from outer space, like landed in your living room and looked around. What would they say is important to us? What would they say our family likes to spend time doing, right? Or if they were watching us, if we had free time and we went and chose to do something, what would that thing be? That's showing what we're important to. Or how do we treat people when there's a scenario at school, right? So helping kids to even be aware that we have values is really a great starting point for the younger kids. And in that adolescent, and again, I love middle school age kids because that's what I taught. And not everyone feels that way, but they are really norming and forming their value system at that age. And we're not going to necessarily get it through explicit, here's what our value is and here's how you will do this. It's actually going to come through how we walk and talk and act, right? And that, again, to go back to like, this is the hard part of parenting, is like, the reality is our kids are going to grow up and be the kind of adults we are.
Such a bummer, guys.
I know, spoiler.
They're actually going to do what you do. We hate to say it, but we come to this a lot. They're kind of going to eat like you eat. They're kind of going to treat people the way you treat people.
Yeah. And the good news is we don't have to be perfect for them to grow up to be great adults, because actually perfectionism is unattainable. It's, I always joke I'm a recovering perfectionist because it's just, you're never going to get there. And actually what's really valuable is showing that to our kids that we do mess up and we make changes to make ourselves better humans. We make mistakes that we fix. We seek to repair when we've hurt someone. All of that is our kids are watching, and that is actually more powerful than just being the like perfect parent who never has conflict or, never says anything mean. That's not realistic. And so I talk about it, the good enough parent, right? Like it's 80% of the time, 70% of the time we're living in our values, right? I said during COVID, we were going for more than half, like it was survival at that point. And that's an important thing to remember is like when we make mistakes, and I'm saying when, not if, when we have that opportunity to go back to our kid and say, wow, I totally handled that badly. I yelled at you. I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that, or I'm going to think differently about it next time. What powerful modeling, right? For our kids to see that when we make mistakes, we apologize, because our teens are going to yell at us, right? We already know that. And we're going to be the worst parents in the world and the most cringe, as the kids say today, like.
Oh, let me just tell you, it's very cringe to say cringe. I've learned from my own middle schooler, I'm not allowed to use the word cringe. That's cringe.
Oh, which is why I use it all the time, because I want to just make her. And again, that's part of the relationship I have with her is being playful and teasing, because that's also a skill, right? Knowing how far you can go without hurting feelings where it's still playful. This is all us give and take in this relationship, right? And it's not perfect because nothing is. So that was a long-winded way of saying like what we do matters. And when I talk to parents about screen use, they always want to know how to fix their kids' screen use. And I will thoughtfully invite them to say, actually, maybe we need to start with you. And again, no judgment, just where are we with this? I do surveys of the school communities I speak to, and it's something like 95% of parents have their phones in their bedrooms at night, all or most nights. And 10% of those parents have them in or on their beds all night. So here's a simple example of if you don't want your teenager to have their phone in their room at night, you do not have your phone in your room at night. And you start that as early as possible when they're 5 or 6 or whatever, even today, even if they're 13. And you say, you know what? Having a phone in my room at night disrupts my sleep. It keeps me up later. I feel distracted, especially if notifications are going up. Can I tell you that kids are texting at 2, 3, 4 in the morning when their phones alert them? Sleep is the low-hanging fruit here, and it has a ripple effect on everything else. So getting phones out of the bedroom is kind of number one. And I'm talking about for parents. And that's a humbling one.
And we talk a lot about one of the easiest ways to solve a problem is spaces and places. So spaces that are not allowed. We do not allow phones at the tables, anybody's phones. Occasionally, we will have to disclose dad or mom has something going on. And we're going to keep the phone here at the table tonight only if this emergency call comes in. We're doing that for a very specific reason. But otherwise, we know these phones are forbidden from this space. And then we have a no phones upstairs rule, which is bedrooms. They don't go upstairs. Now, let me tell you, does the 16-year-old, I'm like, oh, you've been quiet for a while. Do you have a phone up there? Now, do they have their school computer up there, which they can do a lot of the same stuff on? Yes. But I think it can be a sort of a simpler solve.
Yeah. And it's not every time. And I love that you're talking about this because I feel like as parents, it is important for us to have the values, establish the expectations, and have those conversations with our kids. And it's not always going to be perfect. And what you're describing about putting the phone on with exceptions, like today we're going to have the phone out because we're expecting something, that's perfect modeling. Oh, not perfect. I shouldn't say perfect.
Oh, let's go with perfect. Come on.
But I write about this concept of living your life out loud. And to me, that is the simplest. It's free. It's easy. You can do it today. You just narrate what you do as you do it anytime you're using your phone. And to me, that's a great combination of saying both living your life out loud, like, hey, I realize that our expectation is we don't have phones at the dinner table. Tonight, I'm expecting an important call. So I'm going to just set it here within earshot. But I realize this is an exception to our rule and it's not going to happen every night. Great. You're modeling that rules are not always hard and fast, or you're modeling that when there's an exception, you're articulating it so everyone understands, right? Like it's when we try to sneak it, it's when we try to trick, or like that's when we get into the challenges. And you mentioned the phone in the room rule, and we have that too. And do we break it? Yep. And my daughter uses an iPad to text with friends, and that texting with friends sometimes becomes watching YouTube. So I'm just constantly knocking. Oh, door has to be open. You can't have the iPad in the room. And our house is pretty small, so it's not far from where I am. But we have to assume that kids are going to do things we don't want them to do. And our job as parents is to teach, right? That's the root of the word discipline, is to teach. It isn't to punish, in my opinion, like to threaten, to take away. I worked with a parent client who said, I'm realizing that what you're saying is that we are here to teach, not to take. So when a kid breaks a rule around the phone use or whatever that is, yes, sometimes there are circumstances where we need to remove it, right? Certainly safety ones. But sometimes if the goal is to teach them to use it differently. So the example he was talking about was the son was supposed to check the phone in the parents' room by midnight every night. And it kept creeping later and later. And he's like, the expectation is this, and you haven't met it. So we need to reset, and we're going to start at 11:30 now. And then when that's met consistently, we're going to revisit the rule. And it wasn't like, you broke the rule, you're a bad kid, how dare you? It was our goal. Yeah, our goal is to teach you to manage this, right? And so I thought that was a really powerful way of phrasing it. We really have to take that long view of what are we setting our kids up for with digital tech? What kind of users do we want them to be?
And I think that living out loud issue also comes into the values thing of, I find when I'm stressed or busy that I like to wake up on a Saturday morning and spend 2 hours just scrolling nonsense on my phone. And I do it in the living room, on the couch where everyone walks by. And I'll sometimes say, it feels good in the moment, but I don't actually like starting my Saturdays this way. It's something I want to change. And recently I had a kid who got very into some game on Roblox and was kind of obsessing over it. And at some point, oh, do you want to go to the beach with the cousins? Oh, I'm not in the mood today. And I said, well, I think what's really going on is that you're choosing Roblox over this family experience. And is that really the right choice? Like involving the kid, trying to involve the values and having them opt into it a little bit more.
Yes. And I would add one more step too, is if it's important to your family to go to the beach, like that's what's going to happen. It might be like, okay, I hear you, and I'm going to give you another 20 minutes, and then we're going to the beach. That's the plan, right? Yeah, that's what we're doing. And I think and I write about this in the book, but like for any age child, transitioning off of the screen is often the most difficult part, right? And it's whether it's a toddler or a teen, and that's because of that hijacked neural pathway. The dopamine is flowing. They feel good.
That's right. And more so often for kids with ADHD, kids on the spectrum, it can be very difficult to like slap the screen out of their hand and now we're off to the beach.
Exactly. And so we have to honor, I mean, I see it as an issue of being respectful. Like if we're allowing the screen time or they have the screen time, then it is, how do I help them transition off of it and minimize the carnage? Like how do we do it in such a way that it's like, I see that this is important to you, that you want to finish. Here's the expectation. I write about in the book, sometimes it's sitting with your kid in the last 5 minutes. Minecraft is always the example I use because it's like, I just have to put everything away in my trunk and that takes like 20 minutes. So knowing the language of the game your kid is involved in, especially if they're younger, is very valuable because it shows you're paying attention. You can also have them explain, like, tell me about this world you built. Tell me about what you like about this game as I sit here with you. That is building the relationship too, right? You're expressing interest in something they care about. That's all going to matter down the road in those teen years. And when we start, I talk a lot about replacing judgment with curiosity. We start from a place of curiosity. We disarm all of us a bit, right? Because kids, our hackles go up around screen time. It becomes contentious before we even open our mouths. And so if we can dial that back and just start with being curious, and even for your example, Saturday morning, you could say out loud, I'm noticing that I want to do this, but I don't know that it makes me enjoy my rest of my day. And I'm wondering what would happen if I tried something different, right? Again, it's both you modeling it, it's establishing the values, it's explaining how this makes me feel. And again, sort of like airing it out. Everybody can kind of hear and see this as a process because these aren't simple tools. I always say they're not switchblades, they're Swiss Army knives, right? They do many, many things. And so our kids need help seeing how it impacts us and how we do it too.
Right. And it all comes down to what you say is the antidote for screens is connection, right? That like the more we are communicating with our kids, the more we're finding as many moments as connections. That's what works against it, not necessarily any secret trick or app that's going to help us monitor it.
Exactly. And yes, I love the word connection too, because my former English teacher brain thinks about like that it also has a digital connotation, right? Like, and actually, if I can say one more thing, I think I hear a lot that parents feel the need to give their kids phones in the name of safety, right? I'm scared. I'm worried. I need to reach them. I don't want them to get kidnapped, or they can reach me. And Pew Research did this study last year, and they found that the top 3 parental fears in America are youth mental health, bullying, and kidnapping. And what's fascinating to me is that kidnapping is actually statistically almost nil. That somebody did the math. If you wanted, and who does, but if you wanted your child to be kidnapped, you'd have to have them stand outside every day for 750,000 years to be guaranteed of being kidnapped. Years. And yet, that's the number 3 parental fear. And so part of my brain goes to, well, why is that? Well, because the 1 or 2 incidents that are horrible make headline news. And we get that messaging pushed to us. So it feels, we extrapolate that and make it seem like the world really is a dangerous place. And so we give our child a phone to prevent that or to help them in that unlikely scenario. And yet, when we give our children phones with access to the internet and social media, what do? We make number 1 and number 2 worse, youth mental health and bullying. And so again, I just invite parents to think, for whom am I giving the phone, right? Is this for me and my anxiety? Is this a communication tool for my child? If it is, there are very simple minimalist phones that serve that purpose. Is it because I'm worried about their social status, right? This is a bitter one too for us as parents. Like, I don't want my kid to be the only one without it. And that requires discomfort for us. But remember, friction is where we learn.
Emily, tell our audience where they can find more of your work. We know they can find the book wherever books are sold, correct?
Yes, I am big plug for independence.
We love independence. So it will be on our bookshop, and we can link there that supports independent booksellers. And tell our audience where else they can find you.
Thank you. Yes. So my website is thescreentimeconsultant.com. And I write weekly essays that go out to my mailing list that are really high value, a lot about either parenting or what's going on in the education world. So I recommend people signing up for that. And there's a button on my website. You just give me your email. I promise I won't spam you. I don't sell your email lists. I also am on social media. The irony is not lost on me that I'm the screen time consultant with an Instagram account, but I have an assistant that helps me post too. So I try to minimize how much time I'm there. And I'm working on some toolkit for parents around the ed tech piece, the school's screen issue. So that's coming to my website this summer. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in learning more.
Fantastic. The book is The Screen Time Solution, a judgment-free guide to becoming a tech intentional family. And we will link to it and everywhere you can find Emily in the show notes. Emily, thanks so much. This was a great conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me.